proceeds from the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show support PBS Wisconsin programming. Your financial gift helps make this event possible. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show, day one. Is everyone having a great time? Yeah. How many, this is your first year? Wow, well, welcome. You're part of the family now. It's our 20th year here at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. How many have made it all 20 years? Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A few people. Me too. I'm a founding member of the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show with my dear friend Nancy Zeman, our company founder, the host of Sewing with Nancy on PBS Wisconsin. Yes. Yeah, our dear friend. Yeah. We're celebrating Nancy tonight in the Thursday evening event, so we'll celebrate 20 years of the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. And I went back and I found photos from all over the years. Okay, I won't get misty today, right? Yeah. I'm here to talk about our 10, 20, 30 minutes to Quilt As You Go. Has anyone heard of Quilt As You Go? Yes, it's super fun and super easy. We were just talking before the presentation. I had 3 day, a 3-day weekend, Labor Day weekend. The Great Wisconsin Quilt Show is always the weekend after Labor Day weekend, so it's easy to remember. I had 3 days, so I made a quilt. Beautiful. Thank you. This is with Batiks, and just for you, we put together a kit. This is nowhere else. It's not at our store in downtown Beaver Dam. It's only here at the Nancy Zeman Sewing Studio and Quilt Shop booth. So there's a kit for this quilt. But we'll talk about, you can do it with scraps too. We'll talk about this quilt. This is our original 12-block quilt that we did with June Taylor. Jill Repp was my guest on Stitch It Sisters. You can see our Stitch It Sisters videos at youtube.com/Stitch It Sisters. So you can watch this video there. You can watch the video for this. This is called the 12-block quilt, right at the Nancy Zeman blog. So nancyzeman.com/blog, you can see the step-by-steps, how we made this. I'll show you this, and I'll show you in person, too. So here's the Stitch It Sisters video with Jill, and this is their product. It's a batting, a pre-printed batting for Quilt As You Go, which I'll be showing you. You can watch the video right here, and you can see we have a bundle box put together with all the fabrics. And then we always give you the list of supplies. This is a listing of all the supplies I use to make this. It's the absolute easiest way. I'll share my tips with you as I put this together, what I use for tools and products that make it come together, that make it possible to make that quilt in a weekend. Of course, you don't have to use all of the tools listed. So this is the 12-block quilt. If you study the quilt, you can see the 4 corner blocks. Those are all the same. Now, if you made this scrappy, you could make them differently, too. Nancy was a sewing renegade. She broke all the rules. So we give you permission to break the rules, too, and make it your own. So there are 4 of those square and square corner blocks. There are 4 straight down the center. Look right down the center. All 4 of those blocks are the same. So what looks complicated is you're already recognizing that, oh, this is going to be easy, right? And then the 4 blocks on each center column are the same. And that's the block I'll show you today. So we start out with the printed batting. The block is printed right on the batting. Remember paint by number? Yes. We did a lot of paint by number when I was a kid. It was a big 70s thing, I think. My sister's still doing it today. There's adult paint by numbers. Did you know that? Okay. Do you see the backing fabric behind there? That's just a square of backing fabric. The squares are cut 15.5 inches, and that batting is cut about 15. It's all pre-printed. You can't make a mistake. So we spray starch with the June Taylor quilt basting spray, the batting to the backing fabric. In this image, the backing fabric is pink. That's what makes it Quilt As You Go. We are building a quilt block and piecing it and quilting it all at the same time. And there I'm using the June Taylor glue stick. It's purple when you first glue it down, and then it disappears. It's clear. And then I'll step over by my samples to show you the rest. I have step-by-step samples. This is a row of 3 blocks, which we'll come back to. But this is that same block that's up on the screen. I make the samples, I take the photos for the blog post and make the samples for the Stitch It Sisters videos. So these are the same samples from the photo shoot. They're a little wrinkled because they live in my suitcase this week. So I've glued with glue stick. I've glued with glue stick that center square. Okay? And then that was number 1. That square had a position of number 1. And you do receive instructions with the package that have a cut list. It tells you exactly what to do for fabric cutting for each block. There's a cut list of the fabrics and things you need. So the first step would be take 10, 20, 30 minutes and cut your fabrics. The next step would be to place fabric number 2 on. I'll upright it here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you keep going. I believe this one is up to 12. Up to 13. There's 13 pieces on this one. Your next piece you would place on number 2. I place it where it's going to go. I make sure I like what it looks like. And then I place it right sides together. So now 1 and 2 are placed right sides together. You could put a little pin there if you'd like, but these pieces are small enough. I saw the light bulb go out of the front row. Yep, you're a Quilters you go gals now. So you're going to set your sewing machine for a scant 1/4 inch. Don't do a full 1/4 inch, you'll come up short. These patterns are designed for a scant 1/4 inch. Does everyone know what a scant 1/4 inch is? No. It's a 1/4 inch, but just a little bit smaller. It's a seam allowance, right? It's a scant smaller than a 1/4 inch. Because when you stitch this, you place 1 and 2 together and stitch this with a scant 1/4 inch or just slightly smaller than 1/4 inch. When you press it open, here it is stitched. When you press this open and press, once that fabric folds over, it makes your 1/4 inch. So you need to leave a scant for that fabric to fold and make it the full 1/4 inch. Okay? It is forgiving. If you do, you can test it. Go smaller than you think, stitch, press it open. If it goes beyond the blue line, then you know you have to change your machine setting and do a little bit wider. If you do too wide of a seam allowance, you will come up short and your lines won't match up. So you won't quite know what pieces to put where, and you'll come up short around the outside. But you'll see it's a little forgiving if you come up a little short. I'll show you later, I'll remind you about that later. So you may guess what step is next. 1 and 2. So here's piece 3 in position. It's stitched and pressed open. And I'm working from the center out. I started in the center and I'm working out. Now I'll place piece 4. And it's a rectangle. These are all cut 2.5 inches. When we get to the half square triangles, those are not 2.5 inches, but these strips so far have all been 2.5 inches. You place it where you want it to live, and you'll be working on your table. You won't be hovering in the air. Place it right sides together and stitch with your scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then when you press that open, you'll see the center of the square to square starting to form. Now, I'll share a tip with you. We are, as quilters, are used to pressing as you go with the heat of an iron. Here's the tip. This batting is not designed to put an iron directly on the batting surface. You could melt it. So wait to press it with your iron until the block is complete. I have my tools here. And I use it's called a magic seam wand. It's a hardwood tool with a beveled edge, right? And then I just press. I press that seam open. So you stitch it with your scant 1/4 inch, you press it open, and then you take the magic seam wand and you press that seam open. Now if you're thinking, oh, I want it a little bit more open, take the magic seam wand, put it on the heat of an iron, the sole plate of your hot iron, warm it up. It's hardwood, it'll be fine. Get it nice and warm, and then press your seams open. Press them away. So you can use this tool for a lot of different things where it's hard to get a large iron into place. Place 5. Now with this fabric, it's not so directional. When I was making the batik quilt, I thought, oh, that looks nice, but I think I'll turn it around. I like how it looks that way. Again, with this one, it's a really small pattern. It has little white scissors on it. It doesn't really matter. Place it where you want to go. Place it right sides together. And then stitch with your scant 1/4 inch. And then flip. We also call it stitch and flip. Quilt as you go, sew by the numbers, stitch and flip. It's all interchangeable. So look at that. We have a square and a square. Okay. The next piece is a triangle. So we need piece number 6 right now. I place it where it needs to go. I fold it down, stitch, and then press it open. Triangles are kind of difficult to cut. If it said cut 6 triangles this size, it would be kind of difficult, not so great. So what the instructions do is tell you to cut squares. So everyone can cut squares, right? Use your rotary cutter, your ruler, your cutting mat, cut squares. And then diagonally cut the squares in half. Here, I'll visualize it here. This was a square first, before it was triangles. The easiest way to make half square triangles in a quilt is to make a square first and then cut it in half. So we have all the pieces on here. So you can see now it's a block on point once you add the triangles. So I've added all 4 triangles, and now I'm going to place piece number 10. So you can visualize how quickly you can build a quilt, a block. So in 10 minutes, you could sew this block. Maybe the day before, you spent 20, 30 minutes cutting your pieces out. Now you can stitch and flip and press, and you'll have a block within 10 minutes. The cutting took me the longest, cutting all the backing pieces and the pieces on the front. I enjoy cutting fabric. When my non-quilting sister comes to the sewing studio and sees us cutting up fabric, why? She's like, why? Why do you cut up the beautiful fabric just to sew it back together again? Yeah, we get it. We get it. So here we go. We place it where we want it. Place it right sides together. And stitch. On this one, you can see the triangles overextend the line. So even with the stitch and flip, quilt as you go method, you do have those little dog ears, Nancy always called them. Because when you stitch that and flip it open, they'll be there, but it doesn't matter. Now that you see the process, I'll put these, it's nice, it's almost like a flannel board. I can stick these on and you can visualize. And then I can use my samples over and over again. You can come see me at the booth and, okay, how did you do that? You can find me at the Nancy Zeman Sewing Studio booth right inside the front door. So here's a block, right? I'll kind of recap it. The package comes like this with all the batting that you need. Pre-printed batting from June Taylor. It's 12 blocks. What if you wanted a larger quilt? Buy another 12-block set and just make it as big as you want. We're just talking right now about making the blocks. But these are the 3 different pre-printed blocks. And I cut them apart. These are 14-inch blocks when they're finished. So I cut them apart, leaving a 1/2-inch seam allowance all the way around the printed batting. So once you cut out your batting, then you cut out your backing at the same time. And I'll show you my blue. So I cut out for the back of this quilt. Here, I'll show you the back of this one. This is more scrappy, so check out the back. Oh, surprise! Look at that. What a way to use your scraps up. We don't put the backing fabrics into our kits because I know a lot of you have a lot of fabric. And this is a good way to bust your stash. Use it up. And I think it's really fun. It makes the back interesting. I'll show you the back on the other one. This is the blue batik quilt. I'll walk it over. Now this is the same pattern, the same packaging, but I changed the position of where the blocks went. Can you see that? Wow. Now all of a sudden it's like a radiating star. And the picture is on the packaging. I just followed the picture of where I placed the lights and the darks. That's what quilting is, right? Lights and darks. We tend to gravitate towards all mediums. We love the mediums. Well, you can't make the mediums pop unless you put some lights with it. So look at the back. It's all the same fabric. I used a wide backing, a batik wide backing. Yes, batiks are available now in wide backings. I love it. I used a wide backing, and it was very quick because each back square is cut, I believe, 17 and a half inches, squares. And I'll show you that. I'll move this back a little bit so you can maybe see the board. Same quilt, different fabric, different positioning of the blocks. So I laid this on my living room carpet when they were 12 different blocks. And I arranged them in different ways and took a picture. Because what I can see in person, you can't really feel that radiation. So look at the picture on your camera phone, your picture phone. And that really helped me with the placement of the blocks. So here are my backing fabrics. And, in 10 minutes or less, I had all of these cut. So you start with the background fabric. We'll rewind the samples here. And the first thing I did is I spray basted the backing to the pre-printed batting. Okay, here's my backing and my batting. And the next step is to stitch all the way around that outside line, stitch on the line. And what you're doing is basting. You're basting the fabric in batting so that it's one piece and it won't shift on you. So stitch on that outside line. That line becomes important later on when you build your block and you get to this point. Okay, now you're supposed to stitch all the way around the outside of the block. Well, where? Where should I stitch that? Turn it over. Restitch or duplicate stitch over that line you've already stitched. And you have a block, okay? And then you trim your blocks all to 14 and a half inches. And you may, sometimes, and it happens to me too, I may come up short a little bit. Say on this sample, I came up a little bit short on the corners. As long, and we'll talk about sash and a dash next. In this sample, I've started sewing my blocks together. Here's a trim block. In sash and a dash is bias cut fabric that's already pre-sewn for you. And I've passed the sample around. Did everyone see that? Did you study that? It's already made for you. It's already made for you. It will reach you soon. I see the sample coming around. I've sent around a sample of it comes in a 10-yard pack in different colors. I used navy for that quilt, white for this quilt, and it comes in a 10-yard package like this. We did already cut it and put it in the kit for the navy purple quilt. It's right here. Your yardage to make this quilt is all in there. And think of it as trim by the yard. I've never seen anything like this. I don't think anyone has ever come up with this before Jill Rep did at June Taylor. I think it's genius. She's one of our quilting friends, I think, that has the most patents of anyone I know. She's invented so many things. So, once you have your blocks, then you sew rows of 3. And you use the sash and a dash. I'll dash over to the computer so we can get a better look at that. So after today, you'll be masters at Quilt As You Go, and you could teach this, right? So here's a little review. Start in the center. Work out. Do you press with a hot iron? No. Not until the block is completely stitched. You've stitched all the way around. You've trimmed it down. Everything's encapsulated by that fabric. Then you have permission to press.
Ink do you use that you're putting on the batting?
The question is, what ink is the batting printed with? An ink that won't transfer over. So there are different inks. Sometimes think of an iron-on transfer for hand embroidery and things. It's not that type of ink. It's a permanent ink, so it won't transfer over. The issue is not pressing with a hot iron on the ink. The issue is the batting. Imagine ironing on your batting. Well, that could be a mess right away. Good question. So here we are building the block. It's Quilt As You Go. Did you see when I showed the back side of the block, you could see the stitching? It's already quilted. Every time you stitch and add a piece of fabric, you are quilting through all layers. And in 10 minutes, you can make a block because you have all the fabrics pre-cut. And here comes the magic. I didn't show the finished block. But here's the finished quilt and the assembly. Oh, what am I doing here? I'm using my 3/4 inch Clover bias tape maker. Look back at this quilt, okay? Here's the block with the sash and a dash, right? Compare it to this quilt here. This quilt has pink trim. See how much white you see with this? Once you put some trim in place, you barely see any of that white. It becomes an accent color. Remember our favorite medium tone fabrics? That white makes your medium tone really pop, and it really finishes the quilt. This trim is optional. You don't have to do it. If you like the look of that, whichever color of sash and a dash you choose, you don't have to put the trim. But this is what I do. I take 1.5 inch strips, and I put it through my 3/4 inch bias tape maker. Even though it's called a bias tape maker, the fabric is not on the bias. I'll show you a sample. Has anyone ever made bias? Yeah, my sister Dana, when I showed her the bias tape maker, she came to work with me in 2018, and she didn't sew the Nancy Zeman way with all of our notions that we use to make things go easier with the process and things come together. So when I showed her the bias tape maker, that you start with a whiter fabric, you put it through the bias tape maker up on the screen, and it comes out folded. She was like, whoa, I didn't know that you had a tool that could do that. She used to do it on her ironing board with a fork. I've never heard of anybody. Kitchen fork. You've seen that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I grew up with a bias tape maker. I started working with Nancy in 1989, so I've been sewing the Nancy Zeman way for a long time. So after the first bias tape makers came out, and they're in all different sizes, I like the 3/4 inch one for this project. It's just the right size. And after the bias tape maker came out, then Clover came out with the fusible bias tape maker, where you can put fusible tape down the center of the maker. Does anyone have those? It's a different set. It looks a little bit different. Check out the Clover section at the Nancy Zeman Sewing Studio booth. John has one there, and he can show it to you, and I'll be there after my lecture, too. And I can also share this with you after the lecture. This is the absolute easiest way to make trim. I did not cut this on the bias. You can make bias trim with a bias tape maker. You can also make straight trim. This is probably a 45-inch width fabric. This is one crosswise fabric strip. And I made all the trim. And it's kind of fun. I put music on. I put on the yacht rock, right? And I just started grooving to the 70s and sewing. I don't know why I chose that music that day, but it was all last weekend. I was listening to yacht rock on Labor Day weekend. My point was, this is when you add the trim, okay? When it's flat. When you first sew your blocks together is when you stitch your trim on. Don't wait till you have an entire quilt built and then stitch it on. You stitch it on now. If you forgot to add it, your quilt's together, you want to add it later, you can. You can add it later. You just kind of have to weave it together like a top pie crust, over, under. So here's a close-up. I got right down on the cutting mat with my camera phone and took a close-up picture of that sash and a dash. Okay? It's incredible. It is. When Jill showed this to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? Why didn't I ever think of this? But could you imagine if you had to cut your own bias strip fabrics, and then if you opened it, when it passed around, you saw it was 2 pieces of bias fabric stitched down the middle and then pressed through a folder. That would take a long time to stitch that. Well, June Taylor does it for us. You just buy it by the package, and I think it's in 6 or more different colors. So as you can tell, that's how I start stitching my blocks together. Your finished block gets tucked into that sash and a dash, and you can pin it, but I bent a couple pins. Even the heavy-duty flower pins, I bent the pins. So I switched to using Clover's Wonder Pins. Clover's Wonder Pins are a safety pin that you can put through all your quilt layers with one hand. And they hook. So that I found worked really well. But what I liked even better was glue stick. I would run the glue stick down my fabric, and the June Taylor glue stick is just the right width. Now, you're probably not gonna sew a quilt in a round, but I would baste it. I'd glue baste it to my block on both sides, and then I'd stitch. So I could just stitch away. I would glue baste everything. I'd do an entire row, glue baste it. I'd glue baste a second row, and then I'd go sew. The glue would be dry. So glue basting, I'm in love with glue basting. I don't have to take time pinning, it's really fast. I was getting so fast at it that the glue wasn't dry. Okay, so we took a lunch, we broke for lunch. And then after lunch, the glue still couldn't keep up with me. So I thought, what if I try speed drying that with the heat of my iron? I speed dried the glue. So, I don't always speed sew, but I wanted to finish that quilt. It was like a weekend challenge, a 3-day weekend challenge. I'm finishing this quilt. And it took me longer because I was doing the layout for you. Now I have the layout figured out, so I know you can do it in a weekend too. So once you have your blocks together in 3 rows, that's when you add your decorative trim if you want to, and you make 3 rows like this. And that's the back side. You'll make 2 rows like this. Okay, maybe I'll show you here. See the bottom row? On either quilt, the bottom row, you make 2 of those because the top of the quilt is the same thing, only turned upside down. Yes. So the center 2 rows are the same, just change the fabric up. So you're really making 3 different blocks, 4 patches each, 4 blocks each, and you have this 12 block quilt. Same thing here, I'll hold it up again and you'll recognize the top. The top row is the same as the bottom row. Do you see that? The two middle rows are the same. Just one is tipped upside down. It's incredibly easy. All your non-quilting friends will be enamored with your quilt. So as you can see, we'll look back at the blog posting. I don't ever have to create PowerPoints for presentations. I just go to the nancyzieman.com/blog and pull up one of my blog postings and look at that. So we have our row of 3 blocks. And then the next thing you would do is add the sashing across the width. So, because I just sewed this last weekend, the other one, I know that the short sash and a dash are 15 inches, 15 and a half, and the wide one is 47. Same thing. Same thing, just longer sash and a dash. I took over the kitchen counter in the Peninsula, and it just kept growing and growing. I tested out, making the bias trim, not bias, which worked fine. So I thought, I'm going to take my glue stick and glue baste this down. What a great idea. I didn't like the way it looked. The glue basting wasn't as straight. The edges kind of got wide and narrow. It's minor, you can look at the quilt and see it. But then I thought, I'm gonna pull out my my Clover bias tape maker that has the fusible. It has a channel, I put the fusible tape down it, and that was the cat's meow. I fused this in place, no pinning. It stayed in place. It didn't go wide narrow on me. That glue stick is wet. Okay, when you go to make a pressed seam, whether you're sewing quilts, garments, whatever, when you press with your hot iron and add a little steam, that sets the fold. But if it gets moist or you didn't quite dry it, it won't stay folded. Have you had that happen? You have to dry it completely. And that's where we use a tailor's clapper and dry all that moisture out of the fabric to set that fold. That'll stay, there's no glue on this. I just dried it completely when I pressed it. Well, guess what happened when I added wet glue? It started opening up. So that's when I went to the fusible tape. And this is, I think, a 1/2 inch fusible tape. So, good tip to try. Okay. So now that we know how to quilt as you go by the quilt block, as you can imagine, what if you have blocks at home? You have blocks at home. A lot of people call them orphan blocks, right? A leftover block. Sometimes we make a test block before we sew the entire quilt. You have those leftover blocks. Whether it's quilt as you go or not, you can use the sash and the dash with your blocks. All you'd want to do is stitch, and you can't really see it on that one, stitch your block through a batting to a backing. Make your own quilt as you go and just stitching on your seams. And you can use this sash and a dash with any block once you attach a background to it. Once you have your block, your quilt as you go block, or your leftover block stitched to the back with backing, this is when you can take it to your sewing machine, think crazy quilting, and you can set your machine for some decorative stitches, and you could decorative stitch every seam with a different decorative stitch. But you do it when you're in the block, when they're individual blocks. Do it before it's put together. That's another fun way to go. So that's how I make a 12-block quilt. Now, I promised you a trunk show of techniques, right? Or a trunk show of projects. And on your handout, you'll see just a few of the ideas that you can do with Quilt As You Go. The second one, which is a really fun one to make, is called the Sewing Machine Cover and Caddy. Now, I don't know about you, but my sewing area is really dusty. There's a lot of fibers in there. I don't know where they come from. But, so if you want to keep your sewing machine nice and clean, make a quilt as you go, sewing machine cover and caddy. And it's the same, only different. It's a pre-printed batting. Of course, we did a video with Jill Rep from June Taylor. We have the bundle here. If you want to make your sewing machine cover and caddy with these beautiful Caribbean batik fabrics, we have it for you all put together. This one includes the backing. So here it is. It starts as 2 separate. We always spray starch, the June Taylor Starch Savvy. Here's the tip from Jill. She was, Jill Rep at June Taylor was a scientist before she was a quilter. So when we started having issues with spray starch, I remember we started using grocery store spray starch to starch some of our quilting fabrics. Pressing and starching the fabrics make it so much easier to sew. Once I learned that, I stopped trying to sew noodle fabric. Have you ever tried to sew wimpy fabric? Yeah. So spray starching is great. But spray starching from the grocery store can flake and be white flaky, right? Yes. Do you know why? It's made from vegetable starch. And yes, interesting, right? And different vegetable starches. That causes the white flaking. But as you're working on your ironing board with your spray starch, you don't know where this is going. I didn't know I was going here either. That white flaky is residue left over, and people were getting bugs in their ironing board. The bugs were coming to eat the starch. Yes. So Jill's like, we can't have that. So she, with her, background, made this recipe for Starch Savvy in her own personal kitchen. So it's a non-vegetable based starch that will keep your ironing board nice and shiny. Just a sidebar. Here's the cut list of what different shapes you would cut, what shapes you'd need. So it's all right here in the blog posting too. So we cut a lot of strips. And here's the batting. Well, that's interesting. That's not a quilt block, right? But if you've ever made a bag, it kind of looks like that. This is the sewing machine cover. You have those cutouts. If you tipped on your side, it looked like the letter H. When we stitch that together later, that makes the gussets so that it fits over your sewing machine. Here I'm gluing down piece number 1. No, I didn't use the glue stick again on those blocks. It was really piece number 1 that we glued down. You can glue down the outside edges or pin them down before you stitch all the way around. I stitch from the back on the outside line, so I like to glue stick down the first pieces and the last pieces. Then they stay in place when I go to stitch them. So we put down piece number 1, piece number 2, set your sewing machine for a scant 1/4 inch, and then press open. And we're working from the inside out. And there's that magic seam wand I showed before. Remember, don't press your hot iron on batting. And you just build from the inside out. So there's the strip. It's all numbered. So next it looks like piece 15 and 16 are next, just longer strips. And pretty soon you have the quilt top. This is the handle. We covered a little handle. The sewing machine cover and caddy comes with little webbing, cotton webbing for a handle. Well, I didn't want a boring handle on the sewing machine cover. It's a luxury designer sewing machine cover, right? So we just cover the webbing. You can do this for purses and tote bags too. We do it all the time. And we use Clover's hot ruler to press under the fabric. And you just make the little handle and top stitch it on. You can see the little X's to really hold it in place. And then you have a stylish, here we're making the gusset. And we clip out the corners. And when you align that and stitch that, that makes that gusset, that makes that square boxy look. And then there's some binding around the bottom edge. And you can bind any of these pieces, these projects, with your favorite binding technique. We did not use bias binding again for this. The times that we do use bias binding are when the quilt has curves or the project has curves. That's when you need to have your binding cut as bias. Otherwise, you can always sew as straight bias. And we have our absolute easiest binding method at nancyzieman.com/blog. So I did a little video for you too of that. And then this just looks like the quilt. So this is the caddy. We made a quilt as you go. It looks like a table runner. We folded up and then top stitched the edges and made some pockets, and you have a sewing machine cover and caddy. Now I did bring a trunk load of projects with me to show you. What about Fido? Right, the same thing, it's shaped. So this is a shape that you would need to use bias binding for because it has curves. I love doing bias binding. Yeah, it does need to be bigger, doesn't it? It's cute. There's also one that's fish for the kitty cat. Yeah, this is for tiny Fido. But once you've learned the technique, you can start designing your own things. Get some 80-20 batting, marker, and draw your own projects and try it, right? Here's a makeup bag, a big makeup bag, a set of 2. This is called Zippity Doo Done Cosmetic Bag. And you know, now that you know Sash and a Dash, look at, meet Zippity Doo Done. Quilters can now do zippers. The zipper is stitched in the middle of that Zippity Doo Done. I'll show you a pillow too. Oh, I did it so matchy-matchy, it's hard for you to see. There's a zipper right here, okay? See that zipper? I'll show you the inside. Okay, think Sash and a Dash, but there's a zipper down the middle of it. And you're welcome back to the booth to see the samples too. So now you can do pillows. Here's the block, quilt as you go. This is a set of 3 pillows. So you can make 3 pillows really quickly. Well, let's look at here. Since now you've met Zippity Doo Done, these are project bags. We talked about leftover quilt blocks. You have a leftover quilt block. You can add, here's the Zippity Doo Done. This is the navy one with no trim on it, okay? Same thing, opens up, you insert your fabric. More light bulbs going off in the front row. You're gonna do zippers now, I just know it, right? So this is clear vinyl. And if you want to use the June Taylor version, we carry this and it's called project bags. It's a set of 2 different sizes, and it comes with the clear vinyl. And the biggest question I get, oh, Deanna, I've tried sewing with clear vinyl. My sewing machine foot just sticks to it and doesn't go anywhere. Well, great news. You're stitching on the Zippity Doo Done. Your foot never touches the vinyl. So it's perfect. If you do have to sew on vinyl, a Teflon foot or a roller foot is the key to that. Or if you don't have that, put strips of tissue paper, like a gift bag has tissue paper in it. Strips of tissue paper, sew on your clear vinyl, and then it just perforates and tear away. That's how you get through the night at midnight if you don't have a roller foot. So that's a set of 2 project bags. I love making totes and purses. Look at Quilt As You Go. This entire bag was made as Quilt As You Go. This is a class we offered at the Nancy Zingman Sewing Studio and Quilt Shop in Beaver Dam. And if you imagine this laid out flat, it was flat. We made a flat quilt first, and then we sewed the side seams and the gussets and added handles. So you can make totes. Well, what about a little fanny pack? The Zippity Doo Done is back. This could be a crossbody. It could be a crossbody. It's adjustable. So we have the hardware for bag making, pouch making. These have a new, I grew up calling these fanny packs, but now they have a different name. I think they're called crossbody bags. So they didn't like our version called fanny pack. It's the fanny pack, right? Okay. Look at this. This is a lunchbox. So it uses Quilt As You Go and Zippity Doo Done. And it even includes the bag shaper for the bottom that you can wipe down each time you come home with your lunch. So mixing quilting, Quilt As You Go, bag making, and zippers. Yes, we can also zippers now, right? Another class I recently taught was this bag. This is a crossbody bag. It's adjustable. We have actually here in the booth this week these fabrics. Once fabric is discontinued, we cut it up in 1 yard chunks and we give it to you at like $6 a yard at the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show. So in the booth there are hundreds of 1 yard cuts for the fabrics that are discontinued. This one's discontinued, but the 1 yard cuts are here. Here's that navy Zippity Doo Done, all covered. You know, there's my 3/4 inch trim again. And I fussy cut the trim so that it will make a designer bag. And it makes a reversible bag with the pocket all in one. Thank you, Tina. Good thing the computer went out during my trunk show. Well, here's my project. You want to see what I'm working on this next for Christmas? I'm making a tree skirt. It's already a blog posting, so you can see it. And it, insider secret behind the scenes, it looks like it's done on the blog posting. It's not done yet. I haven't finished it. But the way I photographed it, oh, it's done. I got it done. No, I didn't get it done yet. But as you can see, you start with a center wedge and work your way out and quilt as you go. Think like Dresden wedge style. And then I wrapped Clover's fusible piping. I love this product. Clover's jumbo fusible piping. This is a product Nancy and I developed. It is piping with fusible already wrapped around it. So all you do is wrap I did use bias strips, around it and press. There's no sewing to this. Yes, it's fusible. Oh. So here's my tree skirt. You're the only ones that know that it's not finished. But I had to bring it as part of the trunk show. Okay. Now is the time for questions. What booth number? 801. We put it on the handout. We have a huge Nancy Zeman Sewing Studio and Quilt Shop village right inside the front door. So our friends from June Taylor and AccuQuilt have joined us. And you'll see AccuQuilt, June Taylor, Clover, Laura Star, Burnett Sewing Machines, and all of our favorite notions and all of the Quilt As You Go, and all of those 1 yard fabric cuts. Great time to buy those. So booth 801 you can remember that. And I did want to talk about that. This is Quilt As You Go pot holders. When you signed up for your lecture, you saw this as my featured image. I can't talk about it this weekend because these are gone. But I saved a few for you. We're going to give 2 of these away. But these are pot holders that I die-cut little gingerbread. Are you familiar with AccuQuilt? Well, great job. It's new to me. I've been busy working with Nancy for over 3 decades, so we really hadn't had time to play with AccuQuilt. So for those of you who don't know what AccuQuilt is, stop by our booth and we'll demonstrate. But this is great. I'll put my quilt back up or unbury it. Trunk show in reverse. Again, you can take a look at the samples after session. Put my pretty quilt back over here. Most everything besides the triangles, the half square triangles, most everything in this quilt is 2.5 inches. So I'm thinking, why don't I use the AccuQuilt June Taylor and AccuQuilt are owned by the same company now, in Aero Cabinets. So it's June Taylor AccuQuilt Aero Cabinets. So a lot of Wisconsin companies. So I thought, why don't I use the AccuQuilt Go die? This is a better picture of it, okay? This is a big die that you put through a cutting machine. The board is the cutter. There are the cutting blades inside this board, and this is the 2.5-inch strip one. So you just lay your fabric, fold it and press it, and lay it covering the lines. And you put it through the AccuQuilt cutting machine. There's an electric one, there's a crank one, and there's a little Go Mini that we have a great show special at. And we just cut our strips for that. And it went really fast. And they're trimmed and they're straight, and it worked great for that. So I wanted to blend AccuQuilt with Quilt As You Go, so that's why I showed this little project. And this is the Quilt As You Go pot holder, and I'll give you also the little gingerbread that go in here. And Lori is here with Quilt As You Go and AccuQuilt, and you can try this out, and she's demonstrating in the booth. So you can blend. Imagine if you could put appliques with your Quilt As You Go project. So you could put a different shape, hearts, stars, kitty cats, puppy dogs, everything. There's even a sloth. So, yeah, you can now blend, and you can make appliques so quickly now with the AccuQuilt. But you all already knew that. Yes, question?
If I wanted to get creative, you mentioned that, and do my own blocks, do the markings on the block and all that. What ink and how do you make it so that the batting doesn't stretch and gets all wonky on you?
Yeah, she's asking if she wants to get creative, because I gave her permission to, and make her own Quilt As You Go blocks. I've tried it with all types of batting. I've tried it with a Sharpie marker, yeah, permanent marker, if you don't mind that being in your quilt. If you're a purist, you can use pencil or an air erasable or water erasable marking pen. Clover has a whole bunch of marking pens you can use. Also, the Chalk-O-Liners. The Chalk-O-Liners are fabulous. It's just a temporary line of chalk that just puffs away when you sew on it. So, great question. This is made with like an 80-20 batting. You can use the poly batting. You're gonna get a little bit puffier or loftier quilt if you use the polyester battings. But really, anything goes. Yes?
Well, you did the front of the quilt. What about the back?
I did the front of the quilt. What about the back?
I mean,
yeah.
you don't have anything on there that
Right.
we can sew the back.
Right, right. So she's talking about the back, and it's just a solid fabric with a bunch of quilting through it,
I know.
right? So she wants to get creative.
Do that.
She can do that. She wants to get creative, and at the same time, do a patchwork on the back.
You got it.
It can be done. You just cut twice as many pieces, okay? You have no backing when you start. So you'd stitch your first piece down, your 1 and 2, and don't press it open yet. Flip it over and do your 1 and 2 on the back, and then press them both open. But if you're doing that, Quilt As You Go, double time, use the glue stick on every piece. So we look forward to seeing your double time Quilt As You Go blocks next year. Great question. Do I have a technique for making my blocks square with each other? I do. And the most forgiving thing about Quilt As You Go with Sash and a Dash is the Sash and a Dash covers things that don't align. So if you look at the quilt and you really study it, like some of you were before class, you can see when I had this on, I had it on the kitchen peninsula all laid out, and I tried lining up the points of the blocks in the center of the block with a point. But this technique is so forgiving because you have that 1.5-inch sash and a dash disguising that, I didn't quite align it. Okay? It plays tricks on the eyes, and you don't have to line it up anymore. You still should get it kind of close. But, yeah. Does that help? Okay, question? She wants to do that with her own fabric. You can. Are you saying you want to make your own sash and a dash?
Well, either that or just
The instructions include cutting directions. I've lost it up here in all my samples in my trunk show. The instructions include that original way of doing the sash and a dash. It'll disguise it. You won't really see it like you see this.
Okay.
So it includes those original directions and directions for the sash and the dash. Great question. If you're not supposed to iron on your unfinished blocks,
Would it still be okay to use the Clover mini iron just to
oh,
get it?
she's trying to cheat. Is it okay? She's saying, she's asking my permission to use the Clover mini iron. You know, it's the iron, Deanna. It's that iron that's just no bigger than my thumb. Well, you go ahead and be really careful. If you run it off the edge and hit the batting, you'll melt it, you'll get your iron gunky. Yeah. You go for it and be precision.
Okay.
Maybe lay some aluminum foil on each side. Yeah. All right, one more question.
When you sew the block on and you use that scant quarter inch,
Yes.
then you flip it flat.
When you stitch the blocks from the center out with that scant quarter inch, you flip the block.
Does the outside edge lay right against
Does the outside edge of what you've just stitched, you should just see the edge of that pre-printed line. If you cover the edge of that blue printed line, you won't know where you're going next time. So if you take a too big of a seam, I'll exaggerate it. If your seam is too big, you'll come up like that. That's not gonna work, right?
So it should just cover it.
It should just cover it. So try a skinny scant, and then press it open. Oh, and it's too much. I covered the blue line. Go back and stitch right next to your original stitching line. And then do a test sample and write down on a Post-it note on your machine what setting you use for this project, or program your machine. If you can customize your stitches and save your stitches in the machine, save it. Thank you so much. Should we do a prize drawing?
Proceeds from the Great Wisconsin Quilt Show support PBS Wisconsin programming. Your financial gift helps make this event possible. Thank you.